This video will show how to create the following two small C++ programs. First, creating a new C++ file in an empty directory, implementing it with a trivial program printing the classical phrase "Hello World" to the screen. Then the Hello World program will be replaced with another program which receives input arguments from the command line and also receives keyboard input from the user. This video is part of at least one playlist showing how to do the above with different programming languages. There should be a link to that playlist in the description below. Prerequisites. You, the viewer of this video, are assumed to have some skills in at least some programming language. I will not explain basic concepts such as what is a variable, or what is an array, or what is a for loop. Even if you have never written source code with C++, you are assumed to be able to understand, at least roughly, with help of some comments, for example what this C++ code below does. Of course, you can pause the video here. In this video I am using Windows 10, and I have installed MSys2 with the compilers G++ and CLang++. The G++ version is 10.3. The CLang++ version is 11. The Windows command dir shows that I am starting with an empty directory. Now I create a new directory named CPP with the Windows command md and then navigate into it with cd. Then I start Visual Studio Code in that new empty directory by typing code and a dot, which is the path to the current directory. When Visual Studio Code is started, I create a new C++ file, arguments_inputs.cpp, in that new directory. In that file I will implement a main function with two input arguments, which will get their values when the program is started, for example from a command prompt. The first argument, argc, is an integer specifying the number of strings in the second argument, which is an array with the name argv. You can of course give those arguments any names, but argc and argv are very common names for the two arguments of the main function. In this first version of the program I am not using those arguments, but will just print out a classic Hello World statement, just to verify that the installation of the compilers are correct and that they can compile the initial minimal program. You can print output to the screen with the C++ object cout in the standard library in the namespace std. The main function should return 0 or exit_success with capitals to indicate successful program execution. To be able to use cout, you have to include iostream from the C++ standard library. Now I will first compile with G++ and then I will also compile with CLang++. Normally you would probably only use one C++ compiler, for example either G++ or CLang++. But here I am using both of them, just to show that it works with both of those two popular C++ compilers. Both G++ and CLang++ are supporting the compiler flags wall and pedantic, which you can use to get more warnings about potentially bad code. In this very small program, no warnings are reported from any of the two compilers. Now when I execute the .exe file produced by the CLang++ compiler, you can see that it displays Hello World. Now I will replace this Hello World implementation with a program that will receive and print out arguments provided from the command line, and the program will also ask the user for keyboard input, and will then print out to the screen what the user typed. For this purpose I have prepared some pseudocode, which I will paste into the program, but within comments, since it of course would not be possible to compile. Then I will modify it by changing it into C++ code, which can be compiled. The for loop is not iterated from the beginning, but the first item at index 0 is skipped, since it will be the program name. The program arguments start at index 1 in the array. Another thing to mention here is the argc argument, which is needed since the array itself does not contain size information when it is provided as an argument to the function. This is different from how it works in many other programming languages. For example, Java arrays have a field length and C# arrays have a property count. But with C++, it does not work like that. The length of an array can be calculated by using the size of operator when the array size is known at compile time, but it does not work when the array has been passed as an argument to a function, for example the argument to the main function. The reason is that the function argument becomes a pointer to the array, and it contains a position to the first element but not information about the number of elements, which is the reason for why we need a separate argument argc to specify the number of arguments. The operator with two less than signs is called insertion operator, and it was used in the Hello World code to print out just one string to the screen. And it can also be used to print out many strings or variable contents. The last part, std::endl, represents a line break and will be printed to the screen when it is combined with cout and the mentioned insertion operator. To receive user input through the keyboard, you might use the cin object in the C++ standard library namespace std, together with two greater than signs, which is a so-called extraction operator. After that operator, you can provide a string variable which will receive the input from the standard input stream, which usually is the keyboard as default. However, when using cin with an extraction operator like that, then when you execute the program, type input containing a space, then the variable will receive the type text only until the first space. So, if you want to be able to type input containing space, then you can instead use the getLine function. Now I will remove all occurrences of the namespace std::, which does not change anything regarding how the program works, but my personal opinion is that the readability is reduced with all these std::, everywhere. However, you shouldn't really do using namespace std, as I do here, but rather a separate using for everything you want to use from the std namespace. You can see what I mean in the picture next to the source code, and you can of course pause the video here if you want. Now I will compile the code. In the previous compilation of the Hello World, I did not specify explicitly which C++ version to use, but I will do that now. I will compile with C++98 and C++11, with both G++ and CLang++, to show that the code compiles without warning for all of the 4 compilations. When the program is executed, you can see that it works as expected. It iterates the arguments provided from the command line, and then it asks for a name, and when I type a name, it is printed to the screen with hello as prefix. Finally, I will show a problem which can occur when trying to read input from the keyboard, when cin has been used previously. For this purpose, I have prepared a small program. By the way, here I have used multiple separate using statements, instead of using one using namespace std. The program first reads from standard input into a variable input1 by using cin, an extraction operator, 2 greater than signs, and then reads into a variable input2 by using the function getLine. Now I will compile the program and then execute it. I am writing a string which includes 2 spaces, and the first part before the first space will then end up in the variable input1. When you read with cin in that way, with extraction operator, only the first part will be used, the first part before the first space or whitespace character, while the rest will be buffered and then will be used the next time you read with cin. Therefore, the rest will end up in the input2 variable at the reading with getLine, without showing any new input prompt. This can be fixed by using getLine also at the reading of the first variable input1, which I now will change the source code to do. Instead of using cin and extraction operator, the two greater than signs, I am using the function getLine also for the reading into the variable input1. Then I compile the program again. And when I then execute it, it works as expected. Now I can write two strings, even when the first string contains spaces. If you want to know more about how to handle the situation that reading with cin can leave characters in the input stream, you can read more about it, for example at the getLine webpage I am showing here, from the website cppreference.com. And I will also provide the link from the description to that webpage.